What's up, YouTube? Wanted to come back at you and talk to you about some things I was thinking about. A couple videos that's been out. Maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't. They've been pretty viral. It's talking about some women that wanted to divorce their husbands for whatever reason, right? I think that. Oh, let me throw my seatbelt on. Gotta be safe in these YouTube streets. If you could do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. I really would help out the channel. Comment if you have some insight or opinions on the topic. I would love to discuss it in future videos. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was, some videos viral videos of some women discussing, why they almost divorced their husband or why they did divorce their husband, things of that nature. This particular video is a young lady. She was talking about she was going to divorce her husband because she just felt unseen and that, he was working and, wasn't helping around the house as much as she felt he should. Now, keep in mind, there's some caveats to this thing, right? Caveat number one, he's a lineman. So, I don't know if you guys know anything about linemen, but they work pretty hard with their hands. They're out there all day and, all type of weather. They work with the power lines, right? And this particular young lady, I think they had 4 children, and she was working from home. So that right there, that my wife hates it when I say this, but his 40 hours are not like her 40 hours, right? So he's working all day. He's probably leaving earlier than she is. Earlier than she has to go to work, and he's probably coming in later. So that's caveat number one. Number two, he works a lot harder than her because, of his physical demands of his job. So that's caveat number two. But anyway, she felt like he needed to do more things like, washing the dishes, making sure that once the dishes are washed, that she can find things she needs for the baby. So that when she comes downstairs, she doesn't have to hunt for certain things and, taking the trash out so that she doesn't have to do whatever. Right, and she was just feeling like, whatever he was doing, it just wasn't enough. Because sometimes, when she came to him, he would forget to do certain things, or, his mind would be preoccupied, like he might be running late, yada yada, right? So the reason I wanted to talk about this, because what I feel like, and I'm hearing this sentiment, and I don't want to repeat, I don't want to make it a big thing, but I kind of want to talk about why some women feel overwhelmed when, a guy would look at that like, okay, you get to stay at home all day, you get to be with the kids, it's not that hard of a job. I think that, in yesteryear, women had a village, right? You ever heard anybody who's always heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, right? That sentiment applies to more than just a kid, right? I think some women find themselves in situations where it's just them and the husband, right? And, men are continuing to do, especially good men, are continuing to do the things we have done. We go out and we protect and provide for our family, and we take care of, certain things around the house, whether that be yard work. Let's say, traditional masculine roles versus traditional feminine roles. So men have, the masculine men in our society have continued to do those things. And, while the women have taken on additional roles, whether they work or they never did have to before. So that's an additional stressor that they never had before. And 2, they don't have that village. And 3, they don't have that village, right? So, or 2 or 3. I think that particular, in itself becomes a stressor because everybody needs a break, right? We as men can say, I could be around kids all day. It's not that big of a deal. Most of the guys are not around kids all day. And number 2, we have different ways of handling things because we can tune things out. We compartmentalize, right? We can separate the work day from the home, unless you just, hate your job. Sometimes that bleeds into it. But most of the time, if your job's okay, you might have good days and bad days. You can separate work from home. And by the time we're home, that drive home has allowed us to decompress, and by the time we get home, we're ready to take on the next phase. And it really don't we really don't do a whole lot. I mean, yeah, we might have our kids. A lot of good dads out there who worked and played with the kids and did all those things, but it's a little different for us. I think, and don't shoot the message. I think that men are better built to handle the stresses of the world because it's just in our DNA, right? And it's what's expected of us, right? Whereas women have, for all intents and purposes, have gotten to a point where they have, they're in the grand scheme of things, they're relatively new to working for someone. Not saying they never worked, but working for an outside entity that may not care about their well-being, right? They work for something that doesn't necessarily is built into the production of the family. While the income is necessary, the production is not necessarily for the growth of the family. Where in years past, a woman working maybe around the farm, around the house, it was central to the house, right? And in those specific times, those women also had other women to share those responsibilities with, not necessarily inside of her home, but in the rearing of children. Her kids could be with other children during the day, and those children could be hurt. Like, they took breaks, they took turns, especially when the child was very young. She had family members around that would help her or in the rearing of the child, which made it a little bit easier. Now we live in a society where most women are alone and still expected to raise children. And we as men, we look at that like an easy job, because to us it can be a little bit easy because we don't think like them, right? And we're not subjected to the same stressors that they are. We don't handle stress the same way. But I really think it boils down to there's just not a village anymore, right? There's not a group of women together that can help each other in rearing the children and help each other take breaks. Because let's say it like this. Let's say you have, you're in a neighborhood and, you're close-knit, the neighborhood's close-knit. Just like when a lot of us were growing up, we would be at each other's houses, right? So that evening that we're at, such and such's house, our mom and dad have a break from us. Especially mom. Mom has a break from us. And vice versa, when the kids are at her house, that other mom has a break from her children. So she gets to, decompress and, do the things that are vital to a relationship, if she wants to. But most importantly, she gets to have her own time. I think that, all too often, while I think it is an easier job than women make it out to be, being a stay-at-home mom, I don't think it doesn't have its pitfalls. And I think one of the pitfalls is just women don't have they don't have a break from children. And I think that being that they don't have a break and they don't have help, it can be overwhelming. I think that's why it's important that women build their relationship with other mothers, so that they can, if they do have a play date, let's say they all have 4 or 5 kids, they have a play date, the mothers can get a break, and B, if they decide to have a play date together, mom gets that valuable adult time that she doesn't normally have just sitting in the house with kids. I think before we start dismissing some of these things, we have to look at the root problems. I think what feminism does is blame the man, right? It's the man's fault that he's not seeing you. It's the man's fault that you're not, that you're unfulfilled and unhappy. When it really is just that you don't have the networking. You don't have the network around you that our foreparents had. They had bigger families. They stayed near each other, and they had grandmothers and grandparents to pick up the slack. Whereas now, I know a lot of you may be listening to that are around my age. You were at your grandparents' house. You were at your aunts and uncles' houses. You were at your friends' houses. So everybody shared in the overall responsibility of raising children. So no one parent had the children all the time. And such as we got older, we could venture out on our own. But now you live in isolated pockets, and you're cut off from your network, and it makes it a lot harder because you have those children all the time. There's no one else you're going to lie to. If you do get a break, it's few and far between. Versus, when we were growing up, the breaks were, now I wouldn't say constant, but they were consistent, right? Help was consistent. Like my wife, she grew up in a family where her grandmother was around, so the mom could do her thing and had a backup, and had her mother there to help in the rearing of children. The same thing on mine. When I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, whether it was my mom's parents or my dad's parents. Either way, my parents got a break, or I was at my aunts and uncles. Like, sometimes during the summertime, our cousins, we would all go to one aunt's house and we'd be there for the summer, and they took turns doing that because everybody needed a break. Everybody needs a break. And I don't want us to get so far caught into, blaming feminism, because feminism it definitely has twisted the minds without understanding that there is a root problem there, and it's not necessarily feminism, but feminism has chose to make men the root of this. You're unhappy because your husband's not, doing what he needs to do. Yeah, the husband, in those situations, the husband can definitely pick up slack, but you also have to look at the reciprocal nature of the thing, right? So if your husband works more hours than you do, he has a harder job than you do, and he's trying to do his thing. I'm not, and I don't want to make it seem like, all he has to do is work in it, because I think all too often a lot of men say, well, I take care of the masculine roles and that's it. Those masculine, in order for you to have that mindset, I think you would have to also put your wife in a position where she doesn't have to worry about bills. Right? If your wife has to still worry about bills, then you can't really have the role. You need to be cooking and cleaning, because no one wants to work all day and cook and clean and take care of children while you just sit on the couch. That's not fair to anybody. Now, if you are working hard, or you put herself in a position that she doesn't have to worry about bills, and after those children are school age, she has her day to herself. Yeah, then now that's a whole different conversation. But if you're not put in a position where she's working because she wants to, and she's working because she has to, now you got to add that additional stressor in, and you should be doing the housework should be split. Should be split equally. And I think that's the most important thing. But just my thoughts. I don't want to come across as if I'm defending some of the BS I've heard. But I think that it just boils down. Women don't have a village anymore, and they're trying to do things that are uncommon and pretty much hard, and that we were never designed as a species to do. And that was the rearing of children by yourself. And that's why I think that, it becomes so difficult, and they have such a hard time dealing with it, because you're trying to do this thing by yourself, because feminism told you can do it all. And that's my problem. Feminism told you can do it all, and it always sounds nice, because a lot of women jump into these marriages, and they're working, and they have the husband, they're doing all these things. You're like, oh yeah, so they're convinced that this thing is easy. And then they have their first child, and then they have the second child, so on and so forth. Now they're like, oh snap, I was lied to. It's not easy. No, it's not easy, because you don't have a village. And if you want that husband to provide a lifestyle to you, then you're going to have to step it up. You're going to have to find that village, or you're going to have to cut back on some things. You cannot have it all. Like for men, we can't have it all. We know that in order for us to provide the lifestyle we want for our family, we're going to have to work harder. Right? We're going to have to sacrifice some of the things that we want in life in order to give our women what they want in life. So just some things to think about. If you disagree or have any comments, please leave those comments down in the comment section. Please hit a like, and please subscribe to the video. Thank you.